Has fall arrived? I am Mark Sponsler, and welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for the week starting Sunday, September 28th.
Stormsurf, waves, weather, buoys, altimetry, snow, temperatures, El Nino, weather analysis, essential data for outdoor people, all the time, no hype.
If you enjoyed the video, give us a thumbs up. If you have subscribed, please subscribe. Click the Stormsurf icon down in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. If you have a comment or question, write it up down below. We'd be happy to respond. And if you'd like to make a small contribution to the cause, you may hit the super thanks button down below, the heart with the $sign in it. With that, I'd like to thank the folks that donated last week. Tim Caston and E. Slate, thank you all so much. And with that, let's get to work. We'll start by taking a look at significant wave heights around the planet. Starting in the North Pacific, there is a tropical system, NAtla, south of California, pushing north. It is fading, but it has generated swell that is currently hitting the Southern California coast. There's remnants of gale, or actually, a small gale trying to develop here in the Northern Gulf, but it's not doing a whole lot. But then there is a tropical system, Neo-Guri, that is actually recurved and is heading northeast, scheduled to make it to about the dateline. We have a little bit more detail about this when we get further into the forecast, but not sure whether it's going to actually produce any surf, but at least it is recurving to the northeast. That is a step in the right direction. In the South Pacific, we have a gale with 30-foot seas, but it's east of the Southern California swell window, but it will produce swell for Chile and Peru and probably up into Central America. In the Atlantic, a rather active tropical pattern is going on with Humberto well off the coast and what is now tropical storm Imelda trying to develop over the northern Bahamas. We'll get into a little bit more on that later. Low pressure off of Greenland producing 20-foot seas and other assorted low pressure in the area, suggesting the real beginnings of a fall pattern in the North Atlantic. South Atlantic, pretty quiet as you can see, though the Indian Ocean, two gales. This is the main one here with some 30-some odd foot seas. Actually here, 48.0 feet, but that is the highest seas over the entire domain. That is at, you can barely see it, 37 north, 167 east. So that is Neo-Guri right here. So seas, 48 feet, but they're over a very small area. Still, it is debatable as to whether any swell will result for that. But, and again, we'll get into that in a minute. But first off, let's take a look at current conditions. We're going to start off the Pacific Northwest, buoy number 036, Grays Harbor, Washington, right there off the Oregon-Washington border. We're looking at all the energy that's hitting this buoy all the way up to 33.3 second period. That'd be very energetic swell, and there is 1/10 of a foot of energy there. So you could see probably that's, if anything, just background noise. Most energy here in the 13-second period, so there is some swell hitting, as well as some wind swell mixed in there. Primary swell, 4.3 feet, 12.5 seconds from 288 degrees, making surf at 5.4 feet, and then that wind swell, 3.7 feet at 9.1 seconds, again from the west, 275 degrees, making surf at 3 foot. So there are rideable waves up north. Down to Northern California. This would be the Point Reyes buoy, 029, just north of San Francisco. A much more pronounced footprint of 13-second period energy with 3.5 feet right in the 13.3 second period band. You see energy going all the way out to 18 seconds on one end and down to 5 seconds on the other. Primary swell, and this is the most conservative sort of pulling it apart view of that spectral analysis, 5.7 feet at 13.2 seconds from 297 degrees, making surf 7.6 feet. And yes, it was 2 to 3 feet overhead, maybe some sets that were a bit bigger on rare occasions. And actually, I think it was bigger maybe around 11 o'clock this morning, sort of thing, 11, 12 o'clock. So there is definitely swell here, and that sort of answers the question. Is it fall yet, or has fall arrived? Yes, it definitely has, and it's a nice start to the season. So there's also some secondary swell there. 3.8 feet, 10 seconds from 287 degrees, 3.8 foot surf that makes, but, you know, it's completely buried under the more dominant 13-second period swell. Then we go to Southern California. Again, looking at the energy here, a whole bunch of energy strung between 9 and 13 seconds with background energy out to 18 seconds. So this is a mixture of the northern, the Gulf of Alaska swell, but most of it, I think, is associated with the tropical storm Narda, or Hurricane Narda, that was pushing north. You look at, well, let's just go look at the primary swell. 4.4 feet at 11.2 seconds from 185 degrees. So that's all out of the south. None of that's from the north. Making surf at 5 feet, and then some secondary energy mixed in there. 1.8 feet at 14.8 seconds from 198 degrees, making surf at 2.7 feet. Top spots, Southern California, you know, the major swell magnets were 2-3 feet overhead, something like that, and glassy and pretty nice this morning. So definitely when you have that tropical swell or hurricane swell and Gulf of Alaska swell hitting at the same time, that's a clear sign of fall. And it's only the end of September. So actually, you know, we had been thinking, well, it's all going to be displaced about 6 weeks or so off the, you know, a late start to fall. Well, it's a little bit later than normal. I mean, normally the first earliest signs maybe happen in mid-August on a good year, but we're probably not too far off the mark for normal, at least for the moment. Then over to the North Shore of Hawaii, the Waimea Bay buoy, number 106, a much more subdued pattern, if you will. Not even 1 foot of swell energy in any specific period band. Primary swell, 1.9 feet at 11.1 seconds from 325 degrees, making surf 2.1 feet. I'm not even looking at any of the rest of it. That said, Hawaii did have fun rideable surf like 2 days ago, even the day before. So it's not like they haven't gotten swell. They've had a little bit. Now California is getting a little bit. And then the hope is that there's more to come. All right, so let's go back a week. We're going to take a look at significant wave heights at all the oceans around the planet, going back over the past week, a retrospective. So I think this is Neoguri here off of Japan, just pretty much stalled, drifting around on Tuesday and Wednesday. Couldn't quite make up its mind. You see it all but faded out into Friday, and then somehow it sort of regrouped on Saturday. Seas were 31 feet. 33 feet, 40 feet Saturday night, up to 45 feet late Saturday night, and then this morning, theoretically 48 feet, again, over a very small footprint. Now, the question is, and it's sort of heading off to the northeast, will swell show up here in California? Sure, it's possible, but I think there's going to be a whole bunch of other swell that will completely mask it. The next target is potentially Hawaii. Not really on the Great Circle path. This thing, we'll just put it into motion. You see its path right here. So the primary direction is up in this way. Hawaii probably 50 or 60 degrees off the Great Circle path. So sure, maybe some background swell, but I wouldn't expect a whole lot. And then let's just for fun go back here, do a quick look at Narda here. Now, developed off of Mexico. You can see it was way back into like Thursday, the 25th, going pretty much heading due west. Sideband energy from it, though, apparently did radiate up into Southern California. Then, somewhere on Saturday, it stalled and started drifting to the north, which it is doing as of now, producing more swell, pushing up in that direction. So maybe another day of surf for Southern California. But you notice the period, when we looked at the buoys, was in the 11-second period range. So it's not long period energy, but nonetheless, there's rideable waves. And then up in the Dateline region on Tuesday, I rewound this during the break there to the 23rd. There was a gale that developed in the North Dateline region with 25-foot seas, continuing, pushing into the northwestern Gulf, 26-foot seas. Let's see, just verify that. 20, 22, 24, 26, maybe 27-foot seas. That was on Wednesday, and then fading on Thursday. That is the swell that's currently hitting. In fact, maybe we can just watch it propagate down there. You see it moving into California late Saturday into Sunday. Now we go to the South Pacific. Over the past week, starting Sunday, the 21st of September, we'll just put this in motion because the reality is there's not a whole lot going on. We'll see just do a quick inspection here. We're looking for anything that's like 28-foot seas or higher. There we go, 28-foot seas, but east of the Southern California swell window, San Diego at like 117, 118 west. So nope, probably no hope there. And that's current time. So nothing from the southern hemi has been generated and is radiating to the north. And then going back a week, this is Hurricane Gabrielle off of central Florida. This was on Sunday a week ago. Gabrielle continued to the north, did the typical recurve, pushed hard off to the east, actually almost southeast. You don't see that very often, though. And let's see if we can pick up a max sea height. 43 feet, 44, 46. Yeah, 46 feet there on Wednesday. But that is long gone. You see it pushing, actually, the remnants of it pushed right into, not Spain, but Portugal. There we go. Oops. And then you see, let's go back now. And then here was the beginnings of Humberto right here. It actually started earlier than that, but the wave model picks it up on Thursday, the 25th of September. Building, and then there was also another little tropical system that faded, sort of faded, tried to get organized. Then here we are on Sunday. That is Humberto, and this is Imelda, that is now officially a tropical storm, but we'll get into all the details on that in a minute. But needless to say, the southeast coast of the U.S. is going to have a bit of weather activity here, mainly off the coast, thank goodness. Then to the South Atlantic, gale 27-foot seas. This was on Sunday a week ago, and it pretty much got pushed to the south. Another gale falling southeast, and then turned off to the east with 33-foot seas. This is on Wednesday into Thursday, with seas building at one point there to 37 feet. That certainly has produced swell, if not hitting. On its way. Now, it looks like it's already hit South Africa. That was on Friday. You can see the swell front there pushing up to Madagascar. We're into Saturday now. Anything? Oops, I already went off to Sunday, and it's gone. So definitely a more quiet pattern appears to be setting up for both the South Pacific and the South Atlantic. Let's go take one last stop to the Indian Ocean. Here we are, a week ago. Gale, 40-foot seas, pretty much dissipated while pushing east under Australia. Looking for anything else. And there's that gale that pushed under Africa. Did it develop in the Indian Ocean? And oops, there it did. You can see it just starting to get organized with 34-foot seas as of this morning. So we'll have to see what the forecast brings for that. But now we're going to do a deep dive into the North Pacific. We're going to start by looking at Jetstream level winds. These winds up about 30,000 feet help support the formation of gales. When those gales form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough, which we see right here, a dip in the jet to the south. What that helps do is create an eddy in the upper atmosphere, a counterclockwise rotating eddy. And that also manifests itself down at the ocean surface. That's the hallmark of low pressure. And of course, low pressure, if it's strong enough, generates winds. Those winds get traction on the ocean surface, imparting energy to the ocean, producing seas. Those seas, as they propagate away from the fetch area, the lesser period elements decay away, turning into swell. And of course, swell, longer period swell, especially when it hits your coast, turns into surf. So we have a trough with some hope here in the northern Gulf. Let's see how this plays out. It pinches off, but then additional wind energy falls into the trough on Monday into Tuesday. There you go, another trough. Not a whole lot of wind feeding it, but definitely supportive of gale development there right off the Oregon and Washington coast as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday. Definitely looks supportive of gale development. Another trough develops here over the North Dateline region, moving into the northwestern Gulf. It too starts getting pretty pinched as we get into Thursday and Friday. And look at this, it barely holds together and then completely cuts off as a standalone rotating upper level low north of Hawaii, maybe supportive of gale development relative to there. And then typically when you get that, you get a big ridge over top of it. So that's like high pressure, doesn't do anything to support gale development. And then we're out a week. The jet stream pretty fragmented, split, and a mess. So for the immediate moment, that seems now and maybe over the next couple of days is our best shot for storm development in the North Pacific. Let's go take a look and see what's going on, or what's forecast to go on down at the ocean surface. Here we go, surface level pressure, surface level winds, the remnants of NArda here. Let's see, call it 1, 2, well, maybe 600 or 700 miles south-southwest of California, drifting to the north, but pretty weak winds, at least according to this, like 30 knots. Probably not a whole lot of support for gale development anymore. Neoguri right here. We'll get into a quick look at what's going on there, and then low pressure trying to organize here in the Gulf of Alaska. We'll put this into motion. See 35 knot winds pushing towards the coast. Neoguri heading off to the northeast. As we get into Monday morning, Neoguri quickly feeding, probably some of the energy getting stripped out, fed into this low pressure system here, building as we get into Monday with 35 knot winds. Another system off of Japan. Let's see how this all plays out. And then you get into Tuesday with a nice well-formed low with 35 to 40 knot northwest winds targeting Oregon down into California. That certainly looks like a swell producer, but pretty close to the coast here, so that's something to consider. Another low pressure here developing off Japan. Low continues through Tuesday into Wednesday. Here comes the next low pressure system, 30 to 35 knot winds aimed well at Hawaii. The Oregon low starts fading out as we get into Thursday. This is the cutoff low we saw before, now only with 20 to 25 knot winds, probably not doing anything relative to Hawaii at that point in time. Low pressure in the North Dateline region, but all moving up into the Bering Sea, completely cut off from anything. You see high pressure trying to build in this area as we get into the weekend, so we're almost a week out. We'll just take it on out. There's 180 hours out and a pretty convoluted pattern with no defined swell-producing fetch indicated. So what effect will those winds have on the ocean surface? Neoguri here, 48-foot seas pushing off to the northeast. NArda down here with just eyeballing it, maybe 15-foot seas left. Yeah, maybe some background swell being generated for Southern California, but not too much. And low pressure in the Northern Gulf producing 18-foot seas, but nothing too impressive. As we get into Monday, Neoguri all but fades out. Wish it would have pushed over the dateline and build, but secondary low pressure here off of Oregon and Washington builds with seas 25 feet. Holding 25 feet, 25 feet. I'm just reading down here, 24 feet. I think it gets up to 26 feet. There you go, for just a minute. So basically 24 to 25 foot seas in close proximity to the coast. Very north angled relative. It might almost be shadowed relative to San Francisco by Point Reyes and the Farallon Islands. But still, swell, radiating down to probably Point Conception. I would not expect anything for Southern California, just given the extreme north angle of this swell. Next system pushes over the dateline, 20-foot seas targeting Hawaii. I mean, that'll probably be wind swell for the north-facing shores of the Hawaiian Islands. Now we're into 150, 160 hours out, and things definitely settle down. So this is the first pulse right now, a little bit more later this week, and then a bit of a quieter pattern, it seems. Here is the forecast track for Neoguri. This is the Aleutian Islands here. Currently, this 18Z, that'd be like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock this morning, 95 knot winds, but by later tonight down to 70 knots. By Monday morning down to 50 knots, just like what we saw on the GFS model, and it pretty much all but fades out. It is a recurve, but not big enough, not meaningful enough to probably do much in terms of swell production. Then we go to the South Pacific. There's our current time, current run of the model, 12Z. Little gale forecast here developing with 33-foot seas, 33 feet, 30 feet. This would be Monday evening in the Southern California swell window. Very small footprint, but it's entirely possible you could see some like 1.5 feet at 17 seconds, something like that. You need fetch over a broader area, stronger fetch to make a meaningful, beefy swell. But given the time of year, we're practically, well, one day from October. By the time all this happens, you know, you take what you can get. At least there theoretically could be some small swell activity from the southern hemi. pushing this on out. We're continuing to move along here, just looking for any signs of 28-foot seas or better. We're into a week out, and we don't see it. So only one little tiny gale is forecast. To the North Atlantic and the southeast coast, the target of much heat swell, southeast coast of the U.S., west coast, we'll call that from Cape Hatteras down into Cocoa Beach, Florida, or maybe down to Miami. Miami is kind of shadowed by the Bahamas there. So this is Umberto and Imelda hiding somewhere down here. We'll just put this into motion. We have some other data we can look at. So what do we have? 45-foot seas there. Building to 44 feet, 45. You see Imelda just starting to get organized on Monday. Fetch aimed at Cocoa Beach and Daytona Beach area, New Smyrna Beach. 16, 17-foot seas. There you go. 20-foot seas in the evening. 42-foot seas out here. Now watch what these guys do. Humberto takes off to the northeast. That sort of opens up the opportunity for Imelda to get going with seas. And it's 41 foot there, but that's probably 32, 33 feet. And then building maybe 38 or 39 feet. Hard to, let's see. Yeah, hard to tell. Oh, actually, no, that is right. 35 feet at 32 north, 64 west. Sure enough. Can I get another reading out of that? Yep, 39 feet, 39 feet. So that, oh, nope. That was that system. So right there. There you go. 39 feet, northeast winds aimed at the southeast coast. That definitely would produce swell. Now, Imelda tracking off to the northeast, but not super fast. Nowhere as fast as Humberto. So good swell potential from, again, it looks like from the Outer Banks down into wherever the north end of Eleuthera is, maybe like Fort Pierce, something like that. Now look at that. Boom. Taking off on Friday, going extratropical with seas to 50 foot. Can it get any higher? Nope, 50 feet. But that certainly looks like swell for Northern Ireland for sure, and if there's surf breaks up in North Scotland for sure, and on beyond there. That's a pretty solid looking storm indeed. This is the same pattern that's been going on for at least a month now. In fact, the North Atlantic was the first to show the signs of fall, even before the North Pacific, just with storm after storm pushing off of the Canadian coast bound into Northern Europe. So here we are, we're into Sunday now, and then things settle down from there. But if one were to ask me, what is the likelihood for weather in the North Atlantic for this coming season, winter season, it seems like I'd say this is probably the hot spot for the coming year. La Nina, that's pretty typical too. Right up in here is where all the focus is. North Pacific, not so much. All right, to zoom in, GFS model surface level pressure, surface level winds for the southeast U.S. coast. Imelda there, Humberto out here. We'll just put this into motion. Cocoa Beach, Florida, right there. You see 35, almost 40 knot winds wrapping counterclockwise around the storm, aimed at this portion of Florida, but also south fetch pushing up into south-facing breaks of the Carolinas for sure. Not even looking at the swell that's being generated by Umberto, which is pushing north, likely going to spray swell all up in this area as well. So this is sort of like a dream come true from a surf production machine. Notice the two of these lows sharing closed isobars around them. I don't think they're going to rotate around each other like the models and some of the data was suggesting earlier. Now you see the track, they're both basically getting carried by the jet off to the north. Imelda moving a bit slower. Hopefully, as it's rotating away, winds are strong enough in the north quadrant here to push swell back along the coast as it proceeds off to the east. But by Thursday or Friday, that's... Now notice this. GFS model shows, and in fact, I'm going to go back. Watch this. Imelda stalls right there on Friday into early Saturday before it takes off again. That would get another push of swell pushing back towards the coast before it then takes off. Notice easterly fetch, high pressure and control here. generating wind swell up into North Florida and Georgia area. This is positions and max winds for Humberto. Currently 125 knots. That's 145 miles an hour. I don't know if that gets it to a Cat 5, but at least a Cat 4. And that looks like the peak strength of it now. And then as it takes off to the northeast, you see winds fading from there. Imelda, conversely, building as it drifts north. Let's see. So where are our positions here? Right. So the 77, 77, that's all heading north. So just under pure hurricane force. And I'll say at hurricane force into the morning of the 30th. So that's 2 days from now. So that'd be Tuesday with hurricane force winds. And then you see, based on the position here, it starts heading off to the east. Winds building while turning extratropical. This is the hurricane model from Google DeepMind. It is a forecast for where the two different storms are. Let's see if we can get it. Okay, this is number 9. They call it. This is Imelda. This is Humberto here at a category 4. Pretty neat little graphic here. I actually saw Dr. Levi Cohen over at Tropical Tidbits was using this model, so I figured I'd just run it out for you. This is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and all of it out of the picture. Now I'm going to go back and show you something here. All those little speckles, so this is all different tracks from what would you call it? Ensemble model. Okay. And so there's a bunch of different runs within the single model. And then each of these tracks are potential tracks that could happen based on a varying starting, or varying conditions at the time. And you'll start seeing these little dots appearing around the center of the storm. Those are literally the potential center of the storm. You see some dots racing way ahead, some way behind. So it gives you a spread. The further out you go on the models, the more wild the projections could get. So when I say it often, don't believe a model more than 3 or 4 days out. And I'll just go through this. We'll do it one more time. You can see the level of uncertainty, even within the models, as you get, well, let's see, we're like 1 day out, 2 days out, and then you get into 3 days, and all of a sudden the dots start going wild, and you're into 4 days out. And then generally, the models have, they can give you a 50-50 shot on what's going to happen, but you can't start trying to pick details from the models more than about 4 or 5 days out. All right, off to significant wave height forecasts for the South Atlantic. We've definitely gone off the beaten path here, looking at other details of other storms. There's not as much to see here, so I thought it was, looking at that other model was pretty cool. Certainly worth looking at. Okay, as we get into Thursday, gale forecast 33-foot seas south of South Africa, but crashing south. Another gale forms in the deep South Atlantic, with seas up to about 35 feet. It too pretty much fades out. Then here, look, something. Now we're again 168 hours out. A gale forecast with 36-foot seas lifting northeast, building to 38 feet. This is 180 hours out. Do I believe it? No. It's a nice tease though. And a model going out 2 weeks, complete foolhardy mess. I wouldn't believe any of that. So you ask, why don't I show models going out more than 2 weeks? Well, that's kind of why. About a week is about the limit of anything that's believable. And then to the Indian Ocean, we have a bit of a gale here, 35-foot seas, I think that is. Yeah, 35-foot seas, falling southeast. Yeah, some sort of a swell front. You see here pushing up towards Bali, Indonesia, and Western Australia. Probably not the biggest of swells. We'll just roll this out. You definitely, local gale forecast on Saturday. Again, we're like 6 days out with 33-foot seas pushing right into, I guess that'd be like Perth in that area in southwest Australia. Maybe if you live there, that'd be something to keep your eyes out for. But otherwise, it seems like a weaker pattern is setting up for all the southern oceans. Local wind forecast for California right here, way out here. This would be Southern California, Point Conception there, Monterey Bay, San Francisco Bay, Northern California. We are currently under a light south wind regime. Water temperatures quite nice indeed. Seasonally normal, I'd say. I wish it could stay that way much deeper into winter. We'll have to keep our eyes on it. Here is NArda, remnants of it, down south of Southern California, but generally a light wind regime for California. Trades 10 knots for the Hawaiian Islands. As we get into Monday, building low pressure sets up in the Gulf of Alaska, light southerly wind regime for California, light trades for the Hawaiian Islands. NArda, all but gone now. As we get into Tuesday, here becomes the main event, 40-knot northwest winds, but making it only to the California-Oregon border, a light wind regime for California. Weak high pressure north of Hawaii producing east winds at 10, maybe 15 knots. As you get into Wednesday, low pressure just sets up here, just cranking along the coast. You know it's going to be big and stormy all along the Oregon coast, and sideband swell pushing down into California. But again, a light wind regime. Let's go back to Wednesday here. Northwest winds, 5-10 knots. I mean, the GFS model on a scale this broad kind of undercalls it a bit, but you get a good general idea of what's going on. Thursday, again, a light wind regime, though high pressure here starting to nudge into the coast. Trades light for the Hawaiian Islands. Friday, here comes high pressure, clearing high pressure. Northwest winds start 20 knots. That'll probably take a ding out of the warm water here if it lasts for very long. Light wind regime for the Hawaiian Islands. Saturday, again, northwest winds, but you see it's starting to break up along the coast here, and light wind regime for the Hawaiian Islands. Sunday, northwest wind gradient isolated to Cape Mendocino, 30-knot north winds, a light wind regime along the coast. Maybe tropical low pressure down here, but I doubt it, and light winds for the Hawaiian Islands. Oh, and we have 3 more frames here. And we get into Monday, pretty much the same sort of deal. So not bad wind-wise, except for a day or two for North California, and Hawaii is blissfully bathing in light trades. But given low pressure off Oregon, that would make one wonder about rain relative to California. In fact, today, at least along the San Mateo coast, it was this fog drizzle pretty much all day till about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It finally started clearing up, and you could start to get some decent visibility as to what was going on. Anyway, we get into Monday, low pressure builds, rain for Cape Mendocino, pushing south. There's the Golden Gate, so right about sunset, maybe some rain down. I would say San Francisco, sort of more like that fog drizzle kind of thing, but probably not any further south than that. But this big event is on Tuesday. Wednesday, here comes another stretch or patch of more solid rain pushing down Northern California, reaching there we go, right over San Francisco, down to about Santa Cruz, midday Wednesday. Probably not making it any further than that. Some secondary rain tries to set up, but it just doesn't. You notice there was no white up in the mountains here. In fact, I'll go back and play it here. See, there's no snow for Tahoe or anything. It's just too early in the year yet. So we're into Friday now, Saturday, and let's go to Sunday. There we go. And dry pattern after that as high pressure takes control. Sierra temperature forecast. It's still the intersection of the PCT and Tioga Pass Road there in Tuolumne Meadows in Yosemite, but at 8,700 feet, good proxy for what's going on, we'll say for the entire Sierra. 45 degrees, temperatures dipping down into maybe the 40s as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday. Then as we get into Friday morning, temperatures, the red line is the 32-degree line, just barely reaching 8,700 feet. So that'd be, pretty much towards the top of like Squaw Valley and most of the Tahoe type resorts. Then after that, temperatures rise again, hovering in the 40 to 45 degree range out 10 days. So not ready for snow season yet, but maybe a bit of a hint of coolness in the air, suggesting the change of seasons. Again, to the title of the video, fall is here. Surf spot forecast. We'll start up in the Alpha Columbia River there, North Oregon, right on the Oregon-Washington border. Surf heights as we get, well, this is for Sunday, falling 4 feet on Monday, 4 to 5 feet. And then as that low pressure system gets winding up off the coast, surf heights going up to 15 feet, but south winds at 20 knots. If you got a protected break somewhere, that might be doable. Pretty big, rough. I mean, you're going to be very near the center of the storm, so it's probably going to be very raw swell. Then things flatten out as you get into Friday and Saturday. Bare minimal wind swell behind that. Into Northern California, our current swell, which is showing here at like 6 feet sort of thing, fading as we get into Monday into the 3 to 4, maybe 5 foot range, kind of holding into Tuesday. Then here comes the next bout of swell, real north angle, building in the 8 to 9 foot range for all day, most of the day Wednesday, and pretty much all day Thursday, and then things settling down after that. Notice the winds here, southerly at 15 knots, kind of dying. Well, that'd be in the middle of the night, and then starting to come up northwesterly as clearing high pressure builds in. That'd be on late Thursday into Friday. San Diego with its swell from NARDA, 3 foot surf, and that's probably a bit understated. Top spots could probably do even double that. 3 feet continuing into Monday, then slowly trickling down, and then small surf after that. Wind's not an issue, and I forgot to do this, but let's go look at some swell heights. 3 feet at 11 seconds a day, 3.2 feet at 10 to 11 seconds as we get into Monday, dropping off on Tuesday. Then Friday and Saturday, it's just wind swell, 3 feet at 7 seconds, so not a whole lot going on there. North shore of Oahu, 2.5 foot, 3 foot surf, 2 foot, like really nothing going on till you get into next weekend, and then swell comes up 5, 6, 7 feet with light trades. Let's go look at the swell here. So not a whole lot happening until you get into Saturday. And then it's 2, 3, 5, 6 feet at 12 to 13 seconds. Probably not from Neoguri, probably more from low pressure that's forecast in the just over the date line, pushing into the Gulf of Alaska. So rideable surf is possible there. Then off to the U.S. East Coast, of course, not a whole lot going on, but as Imelda and Humberto get doing their thing, you see northwest winds 20 knots, turning onshore in the 18 to 20 knot range as surf heights build to 7 to 8 to 9 to 10, almost 11 feet. That would be on Friday. Then holding even off into the weekend. Let's see if we can get some swell heights out of all this. So 1 to 2 feet at 15 seconds, that would be from Humberto. And then the more local swell likely taking over 6 feet at 10 seconds, 7 feet at 12 seconds, 8 feet at 13 seconds, continuing in some solid form the whole way through the weekend. So if the local winds aren't too much of an issue, there definitely will be surf in Florida. Up to the Outer Banks, Cape Hatteras Lighthouse, surf heights building 13 feet as we get into Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, then slowly trickling down from there, but also notice winds out of the northeast, 30 knots pretty much the whole way through that window, not falling down below 10 knots until Saturday. Let's look at some swell heights, 8 feet at 14.5 seconds, 11 feet at 10 seconds, that's wind swell. 10 feet at 11 seconds, and then fading down, maybe getting up to 13 seconds, 6 feet at 13 seconds into next weekend. So definitely swell, got to find the protected spot. And finally, up into Atlantic City, New Jersey, surf heights up to 8 feet on Tuesday into early Wednesday, winds northeast, so pretty strong. After that, surf heights in the 4 to 5 feet range. Wind not too bad. Let's look at swell here. 5.8 feet at 15 seconds. That's definitely long period swell. And 7 feet at 10 seconds, 5 feet at 9 to 10 seconds. So certainly steady surf, rideable if the wind isn't too bad. With our remaining time, let's go take a look at the long-term outlook. We're going to be examining the two major weather oscillations that affect the potential for production of swell. We're focusing really on the North Pacific here. The MJO, the Madden-Julian Oscillation, and ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. We're going to keep it short this time, so I'm not going to go into all the tutorial stuff. But again, the MJO, 2 phases, active phase and inactive phase. The active phase is what we're looking for. It dampens trade winds. The inactive phase, it feeds trade winds, thereby reducing the potential for storm development. We're looking at data from the TAO buoy array, a series of buoys strung across the equator. This is the East Pacific here, West Pacific here. That is the equator right there. The date line right there. We're just looking at the arrows. Trade's pretty strong out of the east over the East Pacific, pretty strong out of the east in the Central Pacific, and same in the West Pacific. But it is not the actual wind speeds that matter. It is the anomaly. The difference from normal for this time of year. We see kind of a mixed pattern west and east here, suggesting, I'll call it neutral anomalies here in the East Pacific, pretty much neutral in the Central Pacific, and just weakly out of the east in the West Pacific. So no clear signs of either active or inactive phase, just eyeballing the trade winds. Let's go look at the 2-week forecast. This is 850 millibar zonal wind anomalies. Just, are the trades stronger than normal? That would be the blues. Or are they weaker than normal? That would be the reds and oranges. Again, stronger than normal trades suggest higher than normal than pressure, the inactive phase of the MJO, and that is not supportive of gale development. It actually steals the ability for warm, moist air rising up in the atmosphere, driven by the active phase of the MJO, which is a low pressure system. That feeds the jet stream. So this sort of a pattern, stronger than normal trades don't feed the jet stream. This does. But let's take a look here. There's the date line right there. Far West Pacific starts at 125 east, so right there. Here we are today. East anomalies pretty much filling the Equatorial Pacific, inactive phase of the MJO at least. Now, as we get theoretically 7 days out from now, westerly anomalies are supposed to start creeping into the West Pacific, making it to the date line theoretically, or at least normal winds, neutral winds. So that would push the inactive phase out, maybe a weak active phase building in. This model has been hinting at this for weeks, and then you get closer and closer and it never comes. And all the other models are doing the same thing. They seem to be biased in favor of westerly anomalies. We get our hopes up and it doesn't come. I'm not believing this, but this tends to be the more conservative of the models. So if it's showing it, well, maybe I'll give it a little hope. But again, it's more than a week out. So then that sort of cuts the odds down of me wanting to believe that this is going to actually happen. Let's keep digging. The MJO forecast for outgoing long wave radiation, that's cloud cover. Again, active phase of the MJO takes warm, moist air, lifts it aloft, that condenses, it gets in the upper atmosphere, creates more clouds. The statistic model here, in South America, Central America, New Guinea, equator right there, date line right there. This is 5-day blocks going out 15 days. Neutral MJO is what this says, neutral 5 days from now. This would be more cloud cover than normal, but very weak. So that'd say active phase, and maybe a legitimate active phase 2 weeks from now, according to this model, which was consistent with what we saw with the last model. Now here's the GEFS model. The GFS model, it's not showing any of that. So basically, my guess is dead neutral for the next 2 weeks. That's not bad. Doesn't say there isn't going to be storm production, but it's just not going to be aided by the active phase of the MJO or suppressed by the inactive phase of the MJO. Phase diagrams for the same two models, statistic model here, dynamic model here. The MJO, how do you read this? Moves from west to east, from the Indian Ocean to the Maritime Continent, to the West Pacific to the East Pacific, under the United States, across the Atlantic, over Africa, back to the Indian Ocean. If the heavy dot is inside the circle, that's not a good sign. That's saying the MJO is incredibly weak. The heavy dot is where the active phase is right now, so somewhere in the Indian Ocean and very weak. And here's 1, 2, 3 forecast tracks, maybe having it moving to the Maritime Continent, but just ridiculously weak. The GEFS model has the active phase peeking into the far West Indian Ocean and crashing back to nowhere 2 weeks from now. So both these models, forget the details. They're saying no real significant MJO activity. This has been a problem for months now, since April. We could actually show a chart on that in a little bit, but a very, very weak MJO. That means there's not a lot of momentum in the atmosphere. There's not anything to force anything to happen. Yes, storms will form, but they don't have the extra juice to supercharge them to make strong and big and powerful storms or swells. Here's the CFS model going out a month. Past performance above the line. The forecast down below. The date. This is for the whole planet. This is the east-west component of wind. Again, the blues, stronger than normal trade winds, inactive phase of the MJO. In fact, the MJO is identified here by the solid line. That is, any of these circles, these are like the weakest MJOs I've ever seen in my life. You want to normally see a path that goes like the whole way across the ocean. All this is telling us the MJO is extremely weak. Easterly anomalies in control, maybe a little poke of westerly anomalies here, maybe a week out, but that's driven by an ER, the red line. Equatorial Rossby wave, a little bit of westerly anomalies pushing into the West Pacific. A week to 2 weeks from now, and then that all collapses. There is a semi-legitimate inactive phase forecast, but it's not even moving into the West Pacific. So for now, probably more of a continuation of the pattern we're seeing right now, which isn't so bad. Not great, but not bad. And then the CFS model, not going out 1 week, not going out a month, but going out 3 months. The forecast is up here. Past performance is down here again. Blues easterly anomalies, yellows westerly anomalies, roughly associated with the active phase of the MJO. Dateline runs right up the middle here. Now this, again, the model's same sort of deal here. It keeps teasing at westerly anomalies coming a week out. 2 weeks ago, I think it was, they were supposed to happen any day. They didn't happen. Instead, well, you see, we got, a little bit of westerly anomalies, but now we're in, again, a little pulse of easterly anomalies. And theoretically, not even a week from now, like 5 days from now, westerly anomalies building in. And according to this, they stay for the rest of the winter, and not only moving to the dateline, but over the whole way to a point almost south of California as we get into December. If that would happen, that would be insane. That'd be great. These aren't strong westerly anomalies, but it would be a neutral pattern. This doesn't even look like La Nina. It just looks like ENSO neutral, biased, slightly warm. This would be a great pattern if it materializes. But my guess, this model keeps teasing at some sort of easterly anomalies developing here sometime in October. Let's overlay the MJO. Okay, here is all these are incredibly weak, and you see it's just getting weaker and weaker, and then somewhere out in the future, a month from now, a semi-legit active phase of the MJO is forecast. Even these inactive phases here are just so weak as to be like kind of ridiculous. But all that, you go, well, that's all kind of crazy. But then you get the low-pass filter here, and it did. So this shows the solid contour here, low-pressure bias, right? The entrance to the West Pacific starts right here, and you see that low-pressure bias has theoretically already built halfway across the Kelvin wave generation area, almost to halfway to the dateline, okay? And it's forecast to stay there pretty much where it is today, the whole way through the west of the winter. And that's why the model keeps hinting at these westerly anomalies building, because low pressure is going to take over probably the first quarter of the West Pacific. And that would be a good thing. We've talked about this before. The jet stream moves over this area. It gets more moist air being feeding into it from these westerly anomalies, and that makes it stronger and push across the Pacific. Still, this persistent weak MJO pattern that we're seeing is a bit concerning. If the MJO doesn't weaken, you can have all the westerly anomalies in the world. Weak westerly anomalies aren't going to do a lot unless you got a solid active phase over top of it. I mean, this sort of sets up some foundation. The models we've been talking about, La Nina building this winter, or it looks like it is. The models hint it's supposed to collapse. With these building of westerly anomalies, that supports the idea that La Nina collapses, but I don't know. As we get into some of these other slides here, you'll see why I am a little bit hesitant about some of that. So let's go into the El Nino, La Nina portion of the discussion. We're going to start looking down in the ocean. What does the ocean think is going on? Okay? We're going to look at Data from the TAO buoy array. This is subsurface ocean temperatures on the equator from the West Pacific to the East Pacific, 2 degrees north and south of the equator. These are the actual temperatures. These are the anchor lines on the buoys. The X's are sensors. Use the sensors and a model to fill in the gaps, and you get a profile of what the warm and cold water in the ocean looks like. Warm water here represented in the reds, the 29-degree isotherm at 175 east, exactly where it was last week. The 28-degree isotherm at 174 west, exactly where it was last week. The 24-degree isotherm, well, it was at maybe 121 last week. It's 118 west this week. Essentially, no change. And you notice warm water in the west, cooler water in the east. If trades are stronger than normal, you'll get upwelling here, and it'll take all the warm water, push it off to the west. That is typical of normal to La Nina type conditions, and that's sort of what this looks like. But it's not the actual water temperatures that matter. It is the anomalies, the difference from normal for this time of year. We see 1-2 degree above normal anomalies here. At least there are some in the West Pacific. That suggests the trades aren't that strong. But we do have a pocket of 2, 3, almost 4 degree below normal anomalies, centered at 140 west and down about 125 meters. A little bit of semi-neutral water here in the east. But this suggests you have stronger than normal trades pushing off South America, creating upwelling, and this is sort of like your precursor to La Nina. The same data, but amplified with satellite data, and it paints the same kind of picture. Warm water in the West Pacific trying to move east. It actually was holding at 160, but now a little finger trying to move a little bit east, maybe suggesting trades have backed off us a little bit, and you get a little bit of warming pockets here, but still big bolus of cooler than normal water here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4, maybe 5 degrees below normal, and cooler than normal waters even over the date line at the surface. So subsurface-wise, this suggests a stronger than normal trade pattern over the Equatorial Pacific, which is indicative of some flavor of La Nina. The sea level anomaly data is this just is the height of the ocean higher or lower than normal. Cold water depth contracts. That would create a divot on the ocean surface, and you get like negative anomalies. This is the sphere of the ocean. Is it higher than or lower than normal? Down minus 15 centimeters. This is the equator right here. That would be Ecuador there. The Galapagos Islands right there. New Guinea there. This is the international date line. You still see this pattern, Central America there. Cooler than normal waters over the entire East Pacific, indicative of stronger than normal trades here, and then all your warm water balled up in the west here, and you actually see a little indent there suggesting the trades blowing, pushing into a notch right here, and then warm water doing the horseshoe pattern out around either side, again indicative of some flavor of La Nina. Upper ocean heat anomalies. This gives you a trend over time. East Pacific here, West Pacific here. Our buildup of warm waters in the West Pacific, this goes back a year again. This was last year's Modoki La Nina. We thought we were out of the clear as we got into the summer, and then about mid-July, here we go. The cool anomalies showed up again, driven by stronger than normal trades. And here we are today. Doesn't look quite as ominous as last year. And last year was a Modoki La Nina, so this would be Modoki or less, barely Modoki. We'll see as it's really September, October, November when this thing gets ramped up. But for right now, La Nina, but not horribly so. Sea surface temperature anomalies, again, clearly reflecting some flavor of La Nina. South America, Central America, New Guinea here, the equator right there, the date line right there. Cooler than normal temperatures from the Galapagos the whole way across the date line. Not super cold, but not insignificant either. Yes, temperatures warmer, much warmer than normal. That has nothing to do with La Nina or anything. That's just the global warming signal. But this clearly showing some flavor of weak La Nina in control of the Pacific Ocean. Sea surface temperature trend for the past 7 days, South America, Central America, here's the equator. Blues, cooler than normal, or waters that are trending cool. Now notice they're not cool down Peru and Chile. That's a good sign. It's driven by high pressure here and high pressure here. There is the Narda upwelling indicator there, so don't worry about that. Also notice temperatures cooling as low pressures start building and subtropical low pressure systems start, or extratropical low pressures start building here. But a clear cooling trend from the Galapagos the whole way out to, 160 west, south of Hawaii. So no immediate signs of warming for the moment. And then the alternate sea surface temperature anomaly pattern chart here, again, using global average temperatures and the deviation from the global average, also clearly showing some flavor of what cannot be interpreted as anything but some flavor of La Nina here in the East Equatorial Pacific. Sea surface temperature anomaly, the official numbers for the Nino 3.4 region, the official El Nino monitoring region right here for the week of September 17th, 0.4 of a degree below normal. Half a degree below normal to half a degree above is considered normal, okay, within the range of neutral. We've been there for forever. We're on the low end of that scale now, so according to this, we're not even in an official La Nina pattern. And then raw data on the sea surface temperature trend. This is for the Nino 1.2 region. This is not the official El Nino monitoring region, but it's kind of like a precursor. It's right there by the Galapagos in Ecuador. Today's value, 434 thousandths of a degree below normal. Again, from half a degree below to half a degree above is neutral. So we've been hovering somewhere around neutral in this region, but this is the official El Nino monitoring region. Again, half a degree below to half a degree above. The temperature today, minus 1 degree and 34 thousandths below normal. We've been in, at least according to this, some flavor of a La Nina-like trend since August 10th. And continuing to fall, not having reached the bottom yet. This is probably the clearest indicator. That in the sea surface temperature anomaly chart, we saw that definitely water temperatures are cooler than normal. It is La Nina of some kind. We're just not sure how strong it's going to get. Now, the ocean can change, but it typically takes about 3 months from when the ocean changes to when the atmosphere senses it. And right now, the atmosphere is acting like we're just in ENSO neutral as best I can tell. I mean, we're kind of on track in terms of, storm production. Not a great year in the North Pacific, but in the Atlantic, North Atlantic, things are going pretty good, though they sort of indicate La Nina, okay? But this is a good index for what's happening in the Pacific. The Southern Oscillation Index, difference in pressure between Tahiti and Darwin, Australia. Tahiti in the Pacific, Darwin over the Indian Ocean. When pressure is lower in Tahiti, that means the active phase of the MJO is over the West Pacific, and the index goes negative, like this, minus 14.62. But that's only 1 day. 1 day does not make a trend. So you can kind of look down here, and the index has been kind of all over the place, not ever really negative, not ever really positive, just sort of momentumless, if you will. So you can average it out. 30-day average, today's value, minus 0.73. That's zero is dead neutral. Where were we a month ago? 2.44. We went up to like 5 something, and now we're back down to almost zero. So from this perspective, the atmosphere is like completely normal. The 90-day average, plus 3.12, which is like nothing. Where were we a month ago? 3.18. So really no change, as neutral can get. So what do the models say are going on? Well, first, let's look at a graph here. Okay, here's the 30-day running average SOI graphed out. You can see here we are at dead neutral. The upward spikes are the inactive phase, the MJO. The downward spikes are what we want to see. That's the active phase of the MJO. And you can see here, since April, the MJO has kept within the bounds of normal. Nothing above or below, and if anything, like just incredibly weak and gutless, and no momentum in the atmosphere to speak of, at least in the Pacific Basin. Neutral, good. At least it's not up here in the positive range, which would be La Nina-ish. Here's the sea surface temperature anomaly forecast for the Nino 3.4 region. This is on the equator, from a point south of California on the equator out to about the date line. So here's actual values. You can see the steady downward trend. This would be September, and we're right at the half a degree below normal. So right now we're just starting to dip into, according to this, the La Nina territory. This model says, and this is uncorrected data, temperatures going down to 9/10 of a degree for November and December, and by January we're almost back to neutral. So that wouldn't even qualify as a real La Nina, just a bounce in the cool direction and then warming up after that. This is probably a better indication. Temperatures going down to 0.75 or maybe 0.8. Again, as weak a La Nina as you can get. In last week's video, we looked at the consensus model. It showed all the models saying not really going below 0.5 or maybe 0.6. So we're in La Nina. The real question is, will we stay here or will this bounce back into neutral happen in January? Even if it does happen, it's probably too late to save the year, because once the ocean changes, the atmosphere takes 3 months to respond after that. So if we go negative now, so let's say like mid-September, so September to October, November. So sometime in December, the atmosphere will go, oh, water temperatures are cooler than normal. I'm going to start responding in a La Nina manner. And then even if come January, the water temperatures start warming, well, the momentum in the atmosphere is already towards La Nina. It's going to take 3 months for it to dig itself out. So January to February to March. By April, then the atmosphere goes, oh, there's no longer cold water. I'm going to return to a neutral pattern. By then, winter's over. So it kind of looks like the die is cast. We're moving into some flavor of a weak La Nina pattern for this winter. So for right now, there is swell in the water, both north and south of California. Hawaii, maybe it's going to get into a little bit of activity forecast aiming at them. Another gale forecast off the Oregon coast, probably setting up more swell for California for this week. But then as we get past the weekend, it looks like things are definitely going to calm down. The model's not really suggestive of any activity. Atlantic sort of taking precedence with hurricane activity there, where the Pacific was never forecast to have a great hurricane season. So to have at least a semi-solid hurricane swell, which Southern California is seeing right now, that's a check in the positive column. I don't know if we're going to get a whole lot more out of that. In the southern hemi, yeah, I know you all gave me some comments saying, no, I'm hoping the South Pacific isn't going to shut down, because I sort of said, well, it would. But I guess what I really meant to say, no major southern hemi storms are probably going to happen. That doesn't mean there isn't going to be background swell activity. And certainly if you're down in Chile and Peru and Central America, probably a more pronounced southern hemi pattern will be apparent as compared to California and Hawaii. That said, North Pacific appears to be moving in the right direction. Recurving tropical system. If it's La Nina, you typically do not see that. So the fact that we do have Neoguri recurving, even though it probably won't make any meaningful swell, I'll put that as a check in the right direction. But then looking beyond, the discussion, what's the snow forecast look like for California for this coming winter? And everything I'm seeing is not positive. We will be below normal snowfall. That's not to say there won't be snow and there won't be snow days and powder days and all that. Yes, you will, but it's not going to be like at least last year was literally right down the middle in terms of snowfall, a totally average year. And some of the years prior to that were about the same, if not a little bit better. I think we had 3 snow years in a row that were dead normal, which is good. I think this year is going to end up on the negative side. So we're probably due. That's the way it goes. Surf-wise, long term, I'm hoping for a decent year. If the MJO wakes up, if La Nina doesn't dig in too deep, if the westerly anomalies do develop in the West Pacific, I know, promise after promise after promise by the models, they just keep luring us on. We'll have to see what happens, but we're not even going to eke out. I'm just going to say we're not going to eke out a normal year. I on the Pacific forecast on the stormsurf.com website is set a 3.5 out of 10, 10 being a perfect year, 1 being nothing. So if we do better than the 3.5, I would consider that all a bonus. So better get what you can while you can, make the most out of it. At least the water temperatures are warm right now. All right, that's our forecast for this week. If you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up. We would definitely appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Click the Stormsurf icon down in the lower right-hand corner of your page. Comments, questions, always welcome. Write them up. We'd be happy to respond. And if you'd like to make a small contribution to the cause, you may hit the super thanks button down below, the heart with the $sign in it. With that, we are done for this week. We will do it again next week. Same time, same channel. Thanks so much for watching.